So you want to breed mealworms? I can help you with that. I'll show you the 4 stages of the mealworm life cycle and how easy it is to breed them on your own. We'll take a look at what you need to get from here to the next step of the darkling beetle. Once you have those established, it's very easy going forward. And you will have a mealworm farm colony of your own. Welcome to Serenity Belle Outdoors. We are just going to go ahead and dive right in and get started on the process of the mealworms. We have the first phase, which actually begins with the egg, which are really small, white and bean shaped. However, they're really hard to capture on camera, so I went ahead and showed what comes next. And those are the little tiny larvae, which are the mealworms. They come out initially looking translucent, but then they darken in color. Fun fact, mealworms aren't actually worms because they do have legs, as you can see in this close-up picture, and they proceed to shed their skin many times as they grow to the larger size mealworms, which is the size that you may be more used to seeing if you go to the pet store to buy mealworms as feeders for your reptiles, birds, or fish. And let's go ahead and take a closer look at the larger size mealworm. And I think it's interesting to see the little legs in the front and the longer abdomen that it drags behind. The mealworm definitely grows through the different stages of shed, and that abdomen gets fatter and larger to provide all that protein for whichever animals you're feeding. Now getting to the next phase, which will be the pupa, which is the phase right before the darkling beetle will emerge. Initially on this stage, the pupa is very light in color. However, as time goes, it darkens up to get ready for the transition to the darkling beetle. This phase of the life cycle is the favorite of mine just because it looks like a little alien, especially when they wiggle around and move. They don't move as much as the larvae stage with the mealworm, but they do have funny twitches of movements, as you can see in this video. It's really cool to watch. So now I'm going to put all 3 phases together just so you can kind of get a look of a side-by-side comparison of the process of the mealworm. Next, we're going to go to the phase 4, which is the darkling beetle. It is definitely exciting once you see these start to pop up in your enclosure because you know the cycle will start all over soon again with the eggs. So now let's get started. We are going to do what I call the 1 container easy method. You don't have to worry about layers, just get a nice well ventilated container, and now you can put in your substrate. I like to use oatmeal the best, but you can also use bran, wheat, corn, or whatever you prefer. You can also ground that up if you'd like that as well. Next step is just adding in the mealworms. The amount of mealworms you start with just depends on how many animals that they will be used as feeders for. I usually just start with 100 because I don't have a lot of reptiles to feed, but you can start with as many as 500 or 1,000. For those sizes, you will just want to go ahead and get a larger enclosure. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and put in some carrots. These will be a nice source of food and also moisture for the mealworms. That's very important. You don't put in water like a water dish, but you do want to add carrots, fruits, vegetables for moisture, and then you just switch them out every couple of days just to make sure it doesn't start to mold your substrate. Lastly, I added an egg carton on top just to provide darkness for the mealworms. They do prefer to be in darkened, shadowed areas. It's kind of like for the darkling beetles. You can also cut empty paper towel or toilet paper rolls in half and use those for cover, or a piece of cardboard will work as well to provide that needed darkness. And as you can see, the mealworms like to climb all through it. They will chew it a little bit, but mostly like to find the dark hiding places. I have been very successful with this 1 enclosure method with the breeding mealworms, and I will show you in just a minute one of my established enclosures. There are more complex methods where you use different layers and you separate out the pupa and the larvae from the darkling beetles. But I found them to be a lot more work, and I've kind of just had the same results. So I'm going to go ahead and stay with the one enclosure. However, I guess if you have a lot of animals that you need to feed the mealworms to, it may be more beneficial to have a more complex setup. But this way works just fine. And now for that final phase, I'm going to show one of my enclosures that has been going on for over a year. They keep cycling in and out. We just have some new beetles. You see some are brown. When they emerge from the pupa stage, the beetles are a tannish brown in color, and then they darken up over time. Once you see the darkling beetle, that is a good sign that eggs can start to be laid within the next couple of weeks. And then it typically takes about 6 to 8 weeks to see the little tiny mealworms emerging in that translucent color. As for the eggs, if you want to try to see them, you can tilt your enclosure to the side and you'll see little clumps of white eggs stuck to the bottom. It just kind of looks like white gook, to be honest, because they're clumped together. But then if you get a close look, you can see that there are lots of tiny eggs. As for cleaning and changing out the substrate, you don't have to do the changing out of the substrate often, but you do want to keep an eye on it so you can sift out any parts of the substrate that look old and also remove the darkling beetles that die off once they reach the end of their lifespan. I found the best way for me to do it is remove a little substrate at a time and replace it with fresh substrate just so it gets recycled really good through the enclosure. And I also will change the egg carton like once a month or every other month. Spotting that first darkling beetle, though, is always the best. Well, I hope this video has been helpful for you with your mealworm breeding journey. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And thank you so much for watching Serenity Belle Outdoors. You have a wonderful day.